That brings us, we'll do a full rundown. We don't normally do individual episodes, but this is an important individual episode. To the first episode of Impact on Spike TV, October 1st, 2005, taped a few days earlier on the 27th. From the Impact Zone in Orlando, Florida, it's the 65th episode of Impact, the debut on Spike TV, and for me, like, a borderline perfect episode of TV for what it was trying to do.
See, you love this episode of TV way more than I do. Like, I think this is good TV, and it's purely because I'm looking through it with 2023 AEW TV exists eyes, and I'm like...
If you're like, this doesn't have a match
oh
of
my
the year
God,
candidate,
let me finish my thought! Let me finish the words coming out of my mouth!
I need to tell you to fuck off first, but go on.
I was just gonna say, for it to be a, like, actual perfect, like, episode of television, I need, like, a match above 4 stars. But, with the understanding that this is a debut episode, and we're going in there with a specific set of, like, a plan to go in there, show these guys off, introduce people to a new audience, I think it, like, succeeds thoroughly at it.
You're also dealing with an hour.
Yeah.
Which is harder to give people the time to have a 4-star quality match without shortchanging everybody else. But yeah, I really do think, like, this as, like, a cohesive piece of, like, this is what TNA is. That's, like, the pitch of this
mission statement.
This is who AJ is. This is what our tag team division does. This is, like, the big angle. These are the big debuts. They put the X division front and center. They put their homegrown guys front and center. They introduce them well for the most part. I think they do a darn good job of just being like, this is TNA. And I think they give people a pretty darn good reason to come back next week.
Yeah, that's actually something that's really great, is their week-to-week sort of promotion.
Like, there was talk when Collision debuted, which I did really enjoy the first episode of Collision, but I think one of the criticisms after that first episode was like, that was a good episode of TV, but they gave no reason to come back next week. And I'm like, they kind of didn't. You're right.
Which is something that they've gotten better about now, because every time you're watching Collision, they always go like, this is what's on next week's Collision.
Whereas, like, this episode ends with, like, the 1-2 punch of the debut of Team 3D and the return of Kevin Nash. And then ends with 3D setting up the match against AMW for the next week's episode. And it's like, that's a good hook for next week. That's good job. So the episode opens with a Barry Scott narrated video about all the moments building in TNA, how they toiled in fields of relative obscurity, but they toil in anonymity no longer. And, like, I kind of love that they, like, pretty honestly pitched themselves as that. It's like, listen, we've kind of been under the radar. We get Fox Sports wasn't really a real TV deal. We wouldn't have said it at the time, but we get it kind of wasn't. But this is the actual big stage.
I keep reading toiled in the fields of relative obscurity as toilet in the fields of relative obscurity, and I'm like, that's accurate too.
Yeah, you live in Australia, you have outhouses.
Not anymore.
But you do have toilets in fields of relative obscurity in your country. I think more than most countries. Suddenly veered into Australian racism.
You know, not a good look.
I do find it funny that, like, because they focus on the champions here, they're like Styles, face of the X Division great, Jarrett, Cunning, Coy, NWA champion, the Naturals.
And the Naturals are also here.
They're like, oh, youth and experience, vigor, they're great, we love them. But it's like, oh, the Naturals, huh?
Yep, the big four that TNA always goes to. Jarrett, Styles, the Naturals.
I do love this package. I think, like, Barry Scott, as we said a million times and will continue to say for the rest of TNA history, lends, like, a gravitas and a credibility to TNA that they sometimes don't even deserve, but his voice just carries that kind of weight, so that when he is like, AJ Styles is the future of professional wrestling, you're like, you are stating a true fact.
Yeah, you believe.
And I quipped on the watch along that, like, the real only purpose for TNA in the first 3 years was to create cool B-roll for video packages for their debut on Spike.
And it's accurate. And it works.
Yeah, there's some good, all the features on this show where they're like, just like, here's cool shit, here's the X Division, and it's just guys doing dives, or this opening package which is just guys doing cool moves and skipper cage walks as you'd expect, and the Monty thing is just Monty pouncing people. It's exactly what you'd want. And who needed to watch we could have just skipped straight to here and just realized the rest was just video package fodder.
You don't realize that like, if a company does get TV, they kind of do need to have sort of this back catalog of stuff to use.
Because, like, that's the hard part, starting from zero. It's like, well, it's a lot easier to jump on TV and introduce AJ Styles when you have 3 years of footage of AJ Styles being awesome.
Yeah, that's probably the reason that, like, to keep it sort of on the forefront of the news cycle, but also, you know, for that reason of having footage is like why AEW ran those events like once or twice a month leading up to their TNT debut.
Yeah, just have a little bit of B-roll. You need a little bit of B-roll in your life.
You need B-roll. It's a very important part of any sort of video media.
Mike Tenay introduces us to our 60-minute adrenaline rush, stating that we've never seen anything like this on Spike TV. They use that as an outro song for years, but they only use it as the intro song once. Oh, we have the proper TNA on Spike intro song as well, with the freaking Styles forearm and Monty Brown pounce transition, which is the coolest thing that's ever been in the opening titles of a wrestling show. Where like Monty pounces Mikey Bats out of the frame and Styles comes in with the forearm. It's so good. Wrestling shows should be good.
My favorite thing about this is like, this is clearly your nostalgia point where you're like, this is the greatest intro, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I mean, I'm waiting for Cross the Line.
Well, if they put Monty pouncing Mikey Bats in the Cross the Line intro.
I mean, then we could do that.
That's true. Do you have those kind of video editing skills?
I could find a way.
There's YouTube tutorials.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the little side swipe at WWE with the "You've never seen anything like this on Spike TV."
I love petty bullshit. My favorite thing.
Like, there is a note that Spike TV officials, and we'll talk a lot about the end of the Spike WWE relationship in a minute. That's another news note. But Spike TV officials have indicated to TNA that they don't want any direct shots taken at WWE during Impact broadcasts. There doesn't seem to be a big protest coming from TNA brass regarding the matter, but Spike may be gun shy after being portrayed as petty for trying to censor WWE's attempts to plug that their homecoming show would be on USA Network.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I definitely read that as Gunshi. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean?
You're trying to work out what the word Gunshi meant?
Yeah, I was like, what? It sounds dirty.
To be fair, Gunshy is not one word as it is written in PW Tort, so you have a fair reason to shout at Wade there.
Yeah, I was very confused. I was like, what does that mean?
Spike may have been Gunshi.
Gunshi.
But yeah, we'll go into like the drama about the last episode of Raw on Spike in a minute, where they tried to censor WWE. It's great fun.
Very
but
exciting.
Apparently they got painted as the villains in that, even though they're absolutely not. And they were like, all right, just ease off WWE.
I mean, WWE are like masters of not being the villains in stories where they're clearly the villains.
It is one of the better things they're at. We have match graphics for the first time on Impact.
And I think it's great.
Yeah, so it's like, it's kind of like, how would you, orange neon almost? Is that a good way to describe it?
Like industrial.
Yeah, it's like an orange neon sign from a cyberpunk movie that just happens to have like Jeff Hardy versus Rhino on it.
Yeah, it's cool.
It was one of those things. It's like, I only realized when watching that first episode, it's like, we've never had match graphics.
And how much it added.
It's like, we're on 65 episodes of Impact and they've never had a match graphic.
Yeah,
these are the first match graphics in Impact history, as Mike Tenay tells us that our main event will be Jeff Hardy versus Rhino, and we'll also see controversy in Canada later tonight. How do you feel about Hardy and Rhino as the main event?
If you're not going to run a big title match, it's about as good as you can ask for.
Yeah, I guess when like the whole reason you still have Jeff Hardy around is because you want Jeff Hardy on Spike, you might as well put him front and center in the main event on the first show.
I have a bigger problem with the first 2 weeks having their biggest matches end in bullshit.
Yeah, not even bullshit. They both end in DQ.
Yeah, like, that's not the best foot to be getting off on.
Yeah, it's not even the case that like they end in, run-in, interference, and a finish. Neither of them have finishes.
Yeah, like that's my biggest problem is, like, for the company that's preaching how it's meant to be different and not like that bad wrestling company, to be doing the same kind of bullshit is awful.
The second show is probably more defensible in terms of not doing a finish.
Yeah, but like that means on the first show in your first main event, have a fucking finish.
Yeah, but like I was gonna say, in like Team 3D AMW, I'm kind of okay with them being like, we don't want to beat either team. Then you'd be like, don't book the match, but I get why they booked the match too. So in both cases, I understand that decision. In terms of Hardy Rhino, you can pin either guy.
Yeah, that's silly to me.
It's not a case that like you shouldn't pin, because like you shouldn't have 3D beat AMW on their first night. You shouldn't have AMW beat Team 3D on their first night. Fine. And again, usually I'd be like, why would you book the match? But you book the match as an attraction that can bring people back for the second episode.
You could have done like a 6-man.
You could have, but then you'd still be like, do we pin Jarrett or do we pin Nash? You know?
I mean, I'm saying that could have chucked like Jeff or something on the face team.
But you couldn't pin Jeff on the first night, Liam.
You can pin it. Yes, you could. That's my difference.
Yeah,
is that you could
that's my ultimate point. You just could have pinned Rhino, or you could have pinned Hardy. It doesn't matter. Neither of those two guys have anything going.
Rhino isn't winning the title.
No, he's just in a monster's ball.
So you can pin Rhino.
So then we go to our opening contest on Spike TV, the phenomenal AJ Styles versus Roderick Strong.
They do be having an ROH match on TV.
They have a beautiful 4-minute sprint, which we've whiplashed too far the other way, where it's this era was this was the only kind of match you'd get on TV between wrestlers like this.
Yeah, because they wouldn't get any more time.
But now we've whiplashed probably too far in the other direction. It's we need more TV sprints. But it's I think the TV sprint is not only an amount of time. It's it is a state of mind.
Yeah. Oh, and it's like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a game plan more than anything.
Because they don't go out there to have match of the year. They don't go out there to do a million near falls. They don't go out there to have the best match they can. Which you might be why shouldn't you? It's sometimes there's a lot of matches on a show. Not every match should be going out there to have the best match they can. That's just the way shows should be paced.
Tell that to me on TW when we book all out every single match.
Whereas this is 4 minutes, and the main aim of it is to present AJ Styles as the coolest wrestler on earth. And they said they did a fan poll to determine who would be in the first match on Spike, and shock of all shocks, AJ won.
Wait, what is this fucking note about this match?
Oh, there's a wild note about this match after we finish talking about this match. But there's a moment in this match where you might realize NWA-TNA explains the significance of the six-sided ring twice. And part of me was oh, that's weird, but maybe they're just trying to drive it home.
Ad break, catch people on the second time.
But this match continues all the way through, so maybe there was some miscommunication about that. Yeah, I was oh, that's a choice. But then you realize that this match had a finish bought so badly, they sent the two guys out there again and spliced two different matches together.
I'm sorry, Garrett. I have to remove my rating for this match.
Oh, because it was two matches? Oh, you've been worked.
This is not available. I cannot rate.
I insist you put every rating like that on every Lucha Underground and Rampage match too.
Yep.
There's
a difference between being taped and edited and being spliced together between two matches because they fucked it up so hard.
That's taped TV, pal. People should do more of that, by the way.
No, that's ruining the art form.
TV matches should be chopped to death. Screw wrestlers and their art form.
You've been in the business too long.
The match was originally meant to be 9 minutes, cut back under 5 when it was decided they would have a better match that was meant to showcase Styles than go out there and have an even Stevens match, which was probably the right call. Because Strong is great, but AJ is the face of the company. Shouldn't be going 50-50 on the first episode of Spike. Unless it's with, Joe. The Strong match that aired on TV was the original, but the ending was filmed later and edited into the match that aired in place of the original finish. The match's original ending was deemed unairable.
What was it?
It was just a Styles clash. I'm seeing there was people at this taping. If you were at this taping, let us know how badly that first Styles and Roddy finish went.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But as it was presented on TV, absolutely rocked. They went out there, they worked a razor sharp pace. They worked their I'm doing my first match on real TV kind of pace.
Yeah, well, which was kind of the theme of everyone.
Yeah, it's just we have real eyeballs now. There might be nearly 1 million people watching this show, which is far and away. I guess some of these people might have worked Velocity, which would have had 500,000 people watching.
But also that's Velocity.
Yeah, and it doesn't count. So, the difference in the number of people who were, by the time Joe was on his episode, which was the most watched episode of the month, the number of people being introduced to Joe for the first time in that moment is probably, close to, 800,000 to 1 million people watching Samoa Joe for the first time.
Yeah. There's a reason there's some pep in their step.
Yeah, you think the number of people exposed to Joe through Japan and through Ring of Honor is, pretty small, especially in those days where indies were buy a DVD. There was a cost incurred for the youngins when they wanted to get into independent wrestling, unlike these days where you just search free matches on YouTube and watch whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, with your Roo tubes and your Billies.
We do this rant at least every 5 to 10 episodes about how kids these days have it so good when it comes to accessing wrestling.
Oh, I can watch New Japan World. I don't have to go to Vimeo. Fuck you.
Well, they shut down Pivot Share, so...
I told you, I'm in my old jaded era now.
I know, you're supposed to be in the middle ground.
Nah, I'm leaning the other way. I'm too much like you. I learned from watching you.
You got 70% more bitter when I was going to give out to you about it not having a 4-star match criticism.
I was just let me get my point. then you can yell at me.
Your bitterness says you've officially ticked into it now. You've hit that's the moment.
I just want good matches.
You will look back on it and like, that is the moment I hit my late 20s.
It's like in Oppenheimer when in the background of the music is suddenly like intensifying. That was happening for the first 40 minutes of the podcast, and then that's when the bomb dropped.
They just went out and had a great match. Styles hit the reverse DDT, but where he like sprung from the apron onto the like the opposite side of the ropes and then back into the DDT, and that is like the moment where I'm like, you're the best wrestler in the world.
There's always one or two per AJ match point.
Yeah, he also did he's one of two people who broke out a dive and broke his legs off the rail.
Yes, it was a big night for that.
Showing his true commitment to the brand, him and Chris Sabin just shattering their shins and ankles off of guardrails.
I wonder how many people tuned into this show and saw TNA for the first time and were like, what the fuck is this ring?
Yeah, because TNA does explain it. He's like, it offers more options for high-risk offense. It's very unique. It's better for the X Division guys. That's like the pitch. But like that's the appeal, right? It's meant to stop you in your tracks when you're changing the channel. You're meant to see like, oh, like that's the wrestling ring that I'm not used to. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, why is it like that? And you stop and watch for a few minutes and hopefully get hooked.
Do you think that in 2023, in a post-TNA Spike TV world, that if a company debuted on a mainstream channel with a six-sided ring, it would still sort of blow people away in that same way?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Because, like, how many of the new AEW, WWE boom audience, right? How many of them have seen the six-sided?
They would be aware of it, though.
Maybe. Do you think that these 10-year-olds who watch The Bloodline and think it's the best shit ever know what a six-sided ring is?
Well, the 10-year-olds know.
By 10-year-olds, I mean all of their fans up until, like, 25.
Yeah. But, like, if you were, like, of the years 18
I
to
picked
25...
the 1 year younger than me to insult.
Yeah.
As the cutoff.
Yeah. You're a smart old man now. We've discussed this. This is the theme of the show.
That's so fucking funny that I defaulted to the 1 year below me.
If you are an 18 to 25-year-old watching the WWE and that's all you watch...
You're a fucking child.
Because of what we talked about earlier about, like, the access to like, classic TNA, like, they would have seen, like... They would be aware that a six-sided ring is associated with TNA.
Maybe. I think it would be still a significant number of people who would, but maybe less than you would assume.
But like, I think it would still be eye-catching for the same reason it was for TNA, but I think a pretty large amount would be like, oh, it's like TNA. Even if they didn't watch TNA, they'd be like, that's the TNA thing. That's the thing I know about TNA.
That's the AAA thing.
Yeah, TNA stole the AAA thunder. AAA must be raging. Daniels watches on from ringside because he will get the X Division title match. It's his rematch after losing at Unbreakable, but it will be Iron Man 2 with Bound for Glory. Strong sick kicks Styles in the corner, falls with a backbreaker, but then Styles wins with the Styles Clash. A lovely 4-minute TV sprint. The crowd are going apeshit for both matches, I guess. They're going crazy no matter what. Styles looks great. It's a great kickoff to the show. It's super high energy. Strong's the perfect guy for him to be in there with because, well, he's Roderick Strong. And great way to start a TV show.
Shout outs to the people who went to this taping, got to see two Roddy AJ men.
Yeah, it's so funny that they didn't air one. Like, they didn't just say, oh, we'll just air the second one. They were like, the start of the first one is better, but the end of the second one is better. So splice those bad boys together.
And it worked. Like, if I didn't read this note...
Yeah, the only tip-off is the TNA commentary, which most people would be like, weird that he explained it twice. Mike and Don welcome us to the show. They plug Monty coming up, more X Division is coming up, Rhino and Hardy's our main event, and explain that they will show all the controversy in Canada footage as Jeff Jarrett is once again NWA World Champion. We get a feature on Monty Brown.
Vignettes!
Where they finally pull out the actual money. Well, I wonder is it Spike money, or maybe Spike have the archive somehow. But there's finally Monty Brown football footage.
Yeah, I'm guessing like Spike just owned or had it for some reason.
Or they were like, all right, we're debuting on TV, we should license, because they actively like shout out, oh, that's NFL Films footage. So like they got it from somewhere, NFL Film.
Maybe whether they just asked.
Yeah, it might just be a case where it's like, oh, it's just a $50 license fee, and it's like, oh, good.
Yeah, as I've learned from doing the Cinema Club stuff and getting licenses for things, it's not as expensive thing.
Well, depending on what you're asking for, and I guess it probably depends.
And the context
as well. Yeah.
Like, if you're like, I need this footage to broadcast, more expensive than, hey, I'm renting essentially this movie to display at a theater.
So, yeah, they showed Monty playing football, doing tackles, playing for the Patriots and the Bears.
I don't
Bills.
describe it as a tackle. I like to think he's pouncing the other football.
And in that moment, he's like, wrestling.
He goes, ah.
No, he goes, ah, these days, apparently.
He should have had immigrant songs.
Because franchise has Monty, and franchise is like, ooh, you're an action franchise, and Monty is just like, ah. He's such a weirdo. He's such a freak. I love him so much.
Clearly, that was one of WWE's biggest fumbles, is when they brought him in and they just made him a guy and not some weird freak.
Like, every time, we said this with, like, even the Asylum stuff with Scott Hudson, he's just so weird in that wrestling way that makes him utterly compelling, and it's the best. The nerd he's about to face will feel the pounce. Raven then tries to break into the impact zone with the trash can. He's like, you screwed me, you took my belt, what the hell's happening, before Larry Z has him ejected.
The thing about Raven is... he made it to the top with arguably, like, the worst he's looked physically.
Yeah.
Like, he does not look like a guy that I would... Like, if he was still 2003, is that when he came in? End of 03?
Start of 03, January.
Start of 03. When he came in 03, that was a guy that was, like, my top guy. Now, he just looks slobbish, and I kind of get moving away from him. I would have done it in a better way.
Also, like, this is it. Raven's done as a top guy in this company. He's never even remotely near it again.
Yeah, I wonder how much of, like, if Raven still looked like he looked at the start of 03, I wonder if that would have been a different consideration.
Like, the rest of this Raven run is like a year-long feud with Larry Zbyszko, which you can look forward to. And then, like, the weird serotonin stuff, which is, like, fine for what it is, but it's not important. And then he's done.
Until Dr. Stevie.
Yeah, and he comes back right in your nostalgia window. With
the first show I ever watched. The first segment I ever saw.
Ever in your life.
Of TNA? Yeah.
You did exclaim, "This is TNA," when Raven tried to break in and hit Larry with a trash can.
Yeah, because it was just, like, so out of nowhere. And I was like, this is what TNA will be for the next decade.
Monty then had a squash. He beat Lex Lovett. He pounced him.
It was cool.
He's Monty Brown. I love him. We had a feature on the X Division showing, like, a parade of cool moves. Again, making very good use of their B-roll.
It's so much like Oppenheimer. The pacing of this show with its editing is really well done. Just like, boom, boom, next thing.
Yeah, because you have an hour, which, like, in practicality is 42 minutes. Yeah. There's a lot they need to squeeze into this 42 minutes in terms of, like, introduce Monty, introduce AJ, do an X Division match, do a main event, and then do a main event segment. And, like, apparently they a bunch of stuff had to get cut down. We'll talk about that, especially in the main event segment, where that segment is very clearly cut to shit. And, like, the next match is even cut down, but I think probably for its benefit. The Sabin, PD, and Shelley match, I think it's probably better off that match was, like, sliced a little bit. But yeah, it's like, oh, we were even a little too ambitious for what we were squeezing into this show.
Yeah, but hey, it worked in the end. Just had to get to the old cutting room floor.
Yeah, and the benefit is, as you said, it creates a show that has, like, a propulsiveness to it. That is just, like, everything. It is, like Mike Tenay said at the start, it's like your 60-minute adrenaline rush. That's, like, the pitch of this. Which was the same thing they used at, like, the start of Rampage, if you remember, like, the fastest hour in wrestling. It's like the idea of, like, this hour will fly by, and it does. These episodes are much easier to watch than some of, like, particularly the FSN era episodes were.
Of course.
Sabin, PD, Shelley in a 3-way.
Rocks. They're just doing a bunch of bullshit.
I kind of love that, like, this match is on the first episode on Spike. Because, like, everything else I think is, like, a kind of default choice. Like, there's going to be an AJ match. Monty's charismatic, give him a promo, give him a squash.
And our stars doing a match in the main.
Yeah, everything else is kind of like, well, if 100 people were to book this show, 100 of them would have booked the rest of the show, you know?
Yeah, I get you.
This match is the one that I'm like, this took, like, a little bit of, like, faith in these three guys to put on this show, in the sense that, like, if you had 100 people book this show, I think maybe 10 people book a match like this.
You might get a Sabin squash from a lot of people. but like this specific with time 3-way instead of like even doing like a 4-way, like it's such a specific set of circumstances that led to it.
Yeah, and it's the 3 Scott D'Amore students, so that's maybe why it ultimately ends up happening with Sabin, Petey, and Shelley. But it's like 3 TNA guys, 3 of the better guys in the X Division. You want to establish that the X Division is more than just AJ, which I think is smart. You give them, like as you said, a surprising amount of time. I know they had some chopped off, but they still go out there and absolutely kill it for like 8 minutes. It's a really great match. They kick ass. Sabin does the through the leg Shelley suicide dive, so we get like a little bit of machine guns.
Yeah, we had a little taste.
Sabin breaks his shins doing a springboard moonsault onto the guardrail. Don West is like the X, in my mind, stands for extreme.
Also, Shelley has found his look now.
Yeah, he is. He's Alex Shelley, and we're right on the verge of him like going into Planet Jarrett Paparazzi Productions stuff, which is where he finds like his TNA sense of personality. Anyway.
Yeah, we're on the road to the machine guns. It feels.
They did a machine gun spot in this match.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. Sabin pins Shelley with the cradle shock, and you like, Spike debut. You didn't do a Canadian Destroyer. You're crazy. Because if you look at the video package, there's like three Canadian Destroyers in the video package before the match, and you're like, you're crazy. What do you? Oh no, he hits it after the match. There you go.
And then it was in that moment I was like, Scott D'Amore's the greatest of all time. Like, he's like, I know that Petey's not winning, but he's got to hit the Destroyer.
It's got to hit the move. You got to get the move on the Spike debut.
Exactly.
Franchise asks Larry about surprises. He's like, wait and see. But then Tito Ortiz shows up.
August 1 warning.
We are pretty close to August 1. 10-year anniversary of it, for the love of God. Asks about the business they have to take care of, and Larry invites him into his office.
Huntington Beach?
The Huntington Beach bad boy.
Boy.
Which is where Joe was billed from for a while, wasn't it? Huntington Beach?
Yeah, I think he still is.
Not the Isle of Samoa, which is where he was billed from in TNA.
Yeah, I think they're back to Huntington Beach.
Yeah, we have a feature on the 3 Live crew about how funny and entertaining they are. And they'll face Team Canada next week.
Great.
That brings us to the main event of the show, or well, the last match. It wasn't the thing that went on.
The main event was the segment.
Rhino and Jeff Hardy.
They did some bullshit, and then a bunch of people came out and beat him up.
Yeah, it was the weakest of the matches on the show, and that includes the Monty Brown squash. Because that rocked, and the 2 X Division matches rocked, and this was just kind of there. It continues the streak of 2005 Jeff, unless he's falling off ladders or the top of the Impact Zone, which we'll get to in a little bit. He's not particularly interesting these days, and this is a not particularly interesting match with Rhino.
Let me give Jeff Hardy a little credit. It does look like he cares at least now, because there was a run where like visibly it didn't look like he gave a single shit what he was doing, and now he at least looks like he is enjoying being at work. I'll give him that.
I think I'd go as far as to say like he doesn't actively not care.
Yeah, like that. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but it's above the state of where he was like 6 months ago.
Yeah, it's like I would struggle to go as far as to say he cares, but I would say he doesn't like not care.
There's an improvement.
He's in like a middle indifferent but willing to try here and there phase. The match is pretty much nothing. Abyss jumps in the ring and causes a no contest. Post-match does rock, because it mostly just sets out a bunch of guys running out, lights out, Sabu runs wild, crowd go nuts for Sabu.
It's a good build to the Monsters Bowl.
You know what I've come to really appreciate?
Me?
Oh, I don't need to come to appreciate you. Oh no!
Why did you emphasize it that way?
I don't know.
Why did you put so much emphasis on the word come?
You trapped
I don't
me.
have to come to appreciate you.
That was entrapment. Sir, I protest. That was gonna be a nice sentiment that I always appreciated you, and then you trapped me into saying something filthy and dirty.
How did I do it?
It's setting up phrasing.
I didn't do anything.
You, sir, put the words in my mouth.
I'm crying.
I have come to appreciate.
Don't shudder while you say it now. I have
the Don West Sabu. Every time you get a lights out Sabu. He says it in the exact same way with like such the earnest Don West enthusiasm. He's like, Sabu!
He says it like how
He says it how a man should say Sabu at the end of a lights out Sabu.
Yeah. The fuck are we doing?
All these men will be in Monsters Ball at Bound for Glory: Hardy, Sabu, Abyss, and Rhino. They do finally air footage of controversy in Canada. So the big angle, which I didn't actually talk about earlier, but the big swerve really is not just that Jarrett won the title, but America's Most Wanted helped him do it.
And thus becoming Canada.
They weren't actually let out of the country. They're trapped there.
Mm-hmm. These are their twin brothers.
AMW came out, death sentenced Raven, giving Jarrett the title. Scott D'Amore greets Jarrett backstage, and he's like, I love it when a plan comes together. So within story, they lured Raven into a title match in Scott D'Amore's home promotion so that evil Team Canada promoter D'Amore and new associates America's Most Wanted could conspire to screw Raven out of the NWA title, and Planet Jarrett can form in earnest.
So, like, as much as I dislike the title change, the thing that I actually hate more is that the turn of the biggest babyface tag team in company history happened on a show where you don't get to really see. And that's upsetting to me, especially when it's been a team that the crowd has kind of tried to turn heel a couple times, and they've teased it a couple times. The fact that we don't actually get that is kind of annoying.
And, like, it's almost kind of smart to do that in Canada.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's America's Most Wanted. They are very much an American tag team. So the idea of actually doing the heel turn in dastardly old Canada to add that extra little bit of heat would make sense if this Impact was in Canada and it wasn't a BCW show that you're just seeing highlights of.
Yeah.
Yeah. AMW gave into the Jarrett reasoning, gave into the paranoia. Which, to be fair, it's not paranoia. They did bring in Team 3D.
Yeah, Jarrett's right.
Jarrett was actually right. So yeah, Planet Jarrett has come together. So Jarrett and AMW come to the ring. AMW are in suits.
Because they're bad guys now.
They're mean. They're no longer salt of the earth. They no longer represent the common man in America.
It's upsetting. Now they represent the corporate greed in America.
So Jarrett gloats about being champion on Spike. He said he'd be champion, and then he was champion. He followed through with his promises. Takes all the credit for TNA. Thanks AMW as the cornerstones of TNA. And then introduces the final piece, Scott D'Amore. TNA then does connect the dots that D'Amore owns the promotion where the title change took place, thus putting a bow on the conspiracy. D'Amore says that Jarrett owes him one, which, based on TNA history, will not be repaid. Anytime anybody is owed one by Jeff Jarrett, it never goes anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing. That works if these guys eventually catch on to his bullshit.
Yeah, it's part of the reason, like, Rhino turning him down was so good, because Rhino's like, I saw what you did with Monty. You did not return that favor.
But then, unfortunately, it just makes the first guy look like a dumb idiot. Garrett, we have breaking news.
What is it?
Revolution Pro. This is 8 hours ago. Fuck me. Don't worry about it. I'm shit. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going home.
Shibata?
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? Fucking gone.
I'm not going to that show, so it's fine. I'm flying in morning of, which is always risky, but hopefully it'll go fine. Because I flew in morning of for the last time New Japan were over here, and I ended up missing the first 2 matches on the show because my flight got delayed 3 hours. No fun at all. 3 Live Crew interrupt. They do their catchphrases. Conan accuses Jarrett of boring the people half to death. He's like, we've only been on Spike one night, and you've already bored these people to tears. Love Conan. He is the true one truth teller in TNA. They rush the ring, get overwhelmed before the debuting Team 3D, Brother Ray and Brother Devon. There was at one point, it seemed like he was going to be called B or D.
Wait, what?
As in, like, Bubba Ray Dudley, because there's the whole trademark issue we talked about on the last episode where they can't use the names of the Dudleys. So they settled on Team 3D. There was going around, like, the Deadly Brothers at one stage, but they did settle on Team 3D, and Brother Devon was decided on. And then, apparently, they thought about B or D for a while.
That's shite.
Bird.
Brrr.
Thankfully, they settled on Brother Ray, which at least maybe
I remember the Deadly Brothers thing. That floating around for a while there.
before they settled on this.
Brother Ray dead. They mixed both together.
I think that's what they were thinking about for a while, right? That might be what the B or D was, rather than Bubba Ray Dudley. Brother Ray Deadly.
Maybe they weren't sure they were going to be able to get Dudley at all.
Oh yeah, well they knew Dudley was out. Like that was underlined.
Yeah.
And then they realized I think WWE didn't have 3D, so they're like, that's the thing people know us by, so let's work around that.
Honestly, I think as far as, like, having to rebrand the Dudleys, it's about as good as you can get.
Yeah, like, it works. And I'm like, fair enough, we lived it for, like, 18 years now, so...
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, we're not in the moment anymore, so it's kind of broken into our brains that Team 3D is a fine thing to hear.
I'm telling you right now, I never call him Bubba.
Bully?
He's either Bully or, like, I used to call him Brother Ray.
I think people largely did call him Bubba up until he was Bully, and then Bully kind of worked.
Yeah, he's Bully now.
Like, before, like, because Taz would still call him Bubba on commentary when he was in TNA. It's like, oh, it's Bubba. Whereas I think people did slip into bully because that's, again, an easier thing to say than Brother Ray.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody wants to call him Ray.
Or brother.
No, unless he's Hulk Hogan.
Listen here, brother, and Devon and Ray both look at him and go, what? Who? Me? Him?
Oh, during the Aces and Eights stuff where Bully was marrying Brooke, every time he was like, what you gonna do, brother? He should have stopped him like, it's Bully now.
Dad.
They hit the 3D on Storm. They hit the 3D on Harris. Crowd are going nuts. They stare at Jeff Jarrett. Mike today is like, get him! Get him!
Kill him! End his life on Spike TV!
I love babyface announcers like that. That aren't just like, well, I call it down the middle. Like, actively root for the death of the heels.
Like Giovanni with MJF.
And like JR did it all the time as well, where it's just like, yes, like the famous like Stone Cold thing. But he wanted Stone Cold to kill everybody. Jarrett did escape. He backed up the ramp when Kevin Nash's fake Dr. Dre music hit, and he's here.
Cool. Big Sexy!
He walks down the ramp, Jarrett backs up into the ring, gets jackknife powerbombed before Nash makes the challenge for Bound for Glory, which had my absolute favorite line, maybe in the history of TNA, where Nash says, looks like Planet Jarrett is a little off axis tonight, which I think that's the first mention of Planet Jarrett proper as like a group.
Yeah.
Though I suppose it's the catchphrase, welcome to Planet Jarrett, but still.
Yeah, you don't know if he's referring to them as the group, or if he's just referring to the catchphrase.
But Don West replies, in the most earnest voice I've ever heard in my life, thanks to you, big guy.
I choose to believe that the implication is that Big Sexy is so huge that he is simply thrown off the axis of Planet Jarrett.
Just by being in its proximity?
Yeah. Like Big Sexy has his own gravitational force that's colliding with Planet Jarrett.
And like, you throw a planet off its axis, that's
It's
gonna
fucked.
fuck shit up.
Yeah, it's done.
All your climate, different. Waves, different. Day and night, different. You even slightly. Like, it might be the case that like, oh, it's still sustainable for life, but everything we know is different.
It should happen.
just to change things up, just for a bit of fun.
Yeah, why not? It's time that we get a rebrand.
Mike TNA then throws to hear from Brother Ray, and we cut to a Devon promo, which is, we'll talk about how this was cut down in a second. And then Devon challenges AMW to a tag team dream match next week as we go off the air with the tease of two of the, what they crown wrestling's best tag teams facing off, even though, hey, you remember those guys? They're called the Naturals. They're the NWA World Tag Team Champions.
Should have put them in the match, and then we have obvious losers.
I love that next week where like the best teams in the world face tonight in your main event. It's like, guys, the Naturals have the tag titles. Remember the Naturals?
And also, like when like Devon and Bubba are cutting the promo, and they're like, "Yeah, this is about winning the tag team titles," and you're like, "No, that's the Naturals.
Andy, Chase,
They're the tag champs."
Before Team 3D and Nash went to the ring, they were told that there was less than a minute and a half left total TV time for their run-ins and promos. All three had comments edited from TV because of tight TV time. Conan's promo was also cut down. He had more anti-Jeff Jarrett sentiment, apparently. Again, the one truth teller. And Team 3D's Brother Ray gave Vince McMahon the finger at the tapings, and he said, copyright this. But that was edited off the broadcast too. Yeah.
I love this segment. So chaotic.
Yeah, it's one of those, again, where like chopping it down to its like real base elements is created that kind of sense of energy where it's like you get the 3Ds and the crowd are going nuts, and you get the powerbomb and Jarrett, and you get the challenge for Bound for Glory, and you get the challenge for Impact next week, and all of that happens in the space of like 90 seconds to 2 minutes.
They're going crazy with it.
Like, there are times where you want an angle to breathe, you want to sit with something, you don't want to rush through a million things at once, but sometimes it works. Sometimes it is your 60-minute adrenaline rush. Nash was originally meant to return at Unbreakable, do a cameo to begin the build to Bound for Glory, but that spot was meant to be him and Waltman doing an interview together, as like they're in the background talking to each other, and there's something like that, and then the mystery is like, what are they doing? What's Nash doing here? What's happening here?
Is the band back together?
Ooh, not for another 6 years. 5 years? 5 years. And yeah, when Waltman no-showed, they scrapped that, so Nash just schmoozed with some Spike executives and left.
It sounds like a great payday.
I always think about that sometimes. When you look at like what a person did on TV.
Yeah, Lex Lovett on this show.
But like, he had a match.
Yeah, 2 bumps and he's out, brother.
That's true, but he didn't get paid very much.
True.
He's also local, so he didn't get flown in. But sometimes you see someone have like a 60-second pre-tape to set up a segment the next week, and I'm like, you really fly all the way to like Sioux City, Iowa to film that one pre-tape, sit around in catering, and go home? Not sure how I'd feel about that. I was like, could you not have got me to film that last week and left me at home?
Let's keep an eye out of funny scenarios for guys to get flown in for.
Yeah. But yeah, to wrap things up, that is the first Impact on Spike TV. I think, as I said, as an introduction to TNA, as a piece that tells you who AJ is, who Monty is, who Jared are, who AMW are, to give you a hook with Team 3D, a star-driven main event even without a finish, and a cool X Division match in the middle. I'm like, that's a pretty darn good use of your first 42 minutes on Spike TV.
What do you think, relative to its level, was the more successful debut episode of television? The first Impact or this?
This had more... Actually, no, the first Impact had a ton of energy too.
Yes.
The first Impact had a title change.
Do you want me to remind you what was on the first?
I know most of what was on the first Impact. Both probably had Monty squashes.
No, it was an Abyss squash.
Oh, they went for the Abyss squash. Duh. Save that for the second episode this time. But like the first, yeah, it had the 6-man opener, which rocked. The Team Canada against Sanjay, Hector Garza, and... No, it's 6-man.
That was a 6. I'm just trying to fuck with you now.
Don't you test me. It's Garza, Sanjay, and Red. 6-man tag against Team Canada. Bobby Roode, Petey Williams, Eric Young.
There you go. What was the Abyss match?
Oh, it's probably Buck or Lex, isn't it?
Shark Boy.
Oh, it is Shark Boy, yeah, because he goes on the little run around the theme park with Popeye. You get AMW against Kid Cash and Dallas, where AMW win the tag titles. Then you get the Styles return to the X Division main event, where he becomes number one contender in the multi-man. And what else is on that show? Is there anything else? I do think, like, one, this show looks better, which we didn't touch on. There is improvements to the lighting and the impact zone. It looks better. There's more color, except on one camera shot where they didn't color balance it properly. But
yes, which is weird. It was so like distracting.
It does on the whole look better, look brighter, look like a bigger presentation. The crowd are probably a little bit hotter, and because you do have like Nash and Team 3D, you have a better level of star on this show than you had on that one. So I think on the whole, this is probably the better episode of TV.
But we did give 2 matches on that first show, quarter star higher than the 2. You know, keep that in consideration.
It is something we talk like. They do reset shows well.
Yeah, this company has always done a good reset,
and that's always been the thing. And I think every company, it's like there's been 1,000 great reset shows that then never really go anywhere.
Because it's really easy to book the first pro wrestling show that you do. It's the easiest thing in the world to book a debut pro wrestling show.
Yeah, you have a million ideas, you have a bunch of stuff to do, you feel really
You have every bit of resource in the world, just like a complete fresh list of guys with nothing that's hampering them.
Whereas when you're stuck on like the third TV on a pay-per-view cycle, being like, how the fuck are we getting to this Jay Lethal versus Jay Briscoe Ring of Honor World title match? To maybe perhaps use a recent TEW example between the two of us. When you're there and you're just like, I don't know, when you don't even care about the match you booked, which will always happen sometimes, you'll just be like, just do a match I don't care about this month just to get us through the cycle. And yeah, because I'm forgiving for stuff like that once the broad energy is good. Like, you do have to phone it in sometimes. Sometimes your go-home show does just have to be 3 pay-per-view matches smushed together into a 6-man tag. Sometimes that's okay. Usually because the 6-man tag will probably end up being pretty good.
We're doing a post-main event, and we're closing out on chaos.
Everybody runs out, one after another, and there you go. You see you on Sunday. Go to the pay-per-view. Again, that's fine. But yeah, it is very easy to book the like fresh-faced, enthusiastic reboot show where you might do a title change or get a couple debuts in. Everyone's real pumped up and excited. And when you're 4 months down the line, just doing another pay-per-view cycle, trying to keep the same enthusiasm is quite difficult.
Look at us with our well-reasoned, interesting explanation.
Yeah, I think both from the perspective of bookers and wrestlers.
Oh, yeah, but I'm sure the grind as a wrestler is fucking, like, atrociously annoying.
Like, I am sure everybody on this show was so up for it.
Yeah.
It's like,
everyone
was willing to kill themselves on guardrail.
Yeah, and how, like, the pace in which people work, you know, for at least 7 of the people on this show.
Especially Lex Lovett.
My point. For at least, like, 7 people on the show, this is, like, your mainstream television debut. You're feeling fucking amped.
And then, again, 4 months down the line when you're having your 10th match on Spike.
And you've had to deal with TNA backstage bullshit. You get broken down real easy.
Yeah, even the best, most enthusiastic wrestlers are like, house show effort tonight, lads, right?
At some point, it becomes work again.
There's always the difficult thing to remove between, like, I'm not a meaningful artist, but, like, even podcasts are like, it's work this time, isn't it?
Brother, it's work today, let me tell you.
This is where you make a quip that, like, it's work with you every time, brother, carrying you because my back is sore.
Nah, I'd never say that. Just thinking.
But yeah, it is a job. Sometimes, as I said, sometimes you're just going to work, you have a bad week, you just have to get in, get out, do your 90-second pre-tape in Iowa and go home.
It is something that I think a lot of wrestling fans forget. because like it's such a meaningful like way of being entertained to us that like the idea that for some people this is just them clocking in and clocking out is like can be lost very easy because it's such a weird personable mix of reality and performance sort of industry, which is its own unique thing that there's nothing else quite like.
And it's just like the relationship we have with art is is very different from the relationship the artist might have with art. It's like we watch a TV show expecting it to be like the most thoughtful, put together, brilliant thing that everyone's put every ounce of it, everything they have into. That's kind of what everybody expects every time you watch a show or you watch a movie or you watch a wrestling match. And sometimes it is just like, oh, we have a script deadline, let's get whatever we can over the line. And sometimes it is like, oh, we shot that scene, it took fucking 17 hours, we had a long shoot day and no one gave a shit at the end and we just finished that shit. Like, everything is like that sometime.
And then sometimes you're lucky enough that you're like, this is a thing that I need to fill TV time, but these two guys both care and they make something out of it. And then sometimes it's the opposite, where you like something you really care about that you're booking, and then like these people might not necessarily be into it or have their own personal things going on, and they're like, they don't deliver it to the level that you thought it was going to be at.
There's just a lot of variables is what we're saying.
Well, because, like, more than anything else, like, wrestling is dealing on the whims of 1,000 different performers at once. And they're doing live performance weekly. And the audience, of course, yeah.
That's the first episode on Spike. Good episode.
We've done 2 topics.